Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is Monday, the 30th of August 2021, and these are the stories that we will be discussing during the course of today's show. We'll begin with the situation in Afghanistan and, of course, with relevance to the cross-border attacks that have been happening through the Pak-Afghan border into Pakistan. In the latest incident, 3 personnel, 2 civilians have been martyred in terrorist attacks in the merged districts. What does the latest situation in Afghan board as far as the trickling of terrorism into Pakistan is concerned? This is going to be our leading segment of the day. Then, ladies and gentlemen, our second segment of the day will be discussing the latest which is emanating from Afghanistan. The threat, of course, that is emanating from the ISKP as far as the different incidents that have happened in Kabul are concerned. And of course, the retaliation by the United States as well as far as killing the IS perpetrators is concerned. What is that going to hold up? How are the different other countries, also the regional players, whether it be Russia, whether it be Turkey, whether it be the European Union, whether it be the Central Asian states, Iran and Pakistan, going to play in the future of Afghanistan? That is going to be our second segment of the day. Then we will be discussing, of course, an article that has come out from a very prominent journalist in India that talks about democracy and how it is dwindling in our neighboring country that calls itself a so-called largest democracy of the world. There are different indexes that the journalist has cited, and we'll be discussing that in our third segment, as well as, of course, the Indian Defence Minister's allegations that have been rejected by Pakistan's Foreign Office. And then finally, we'll also be talking about the youth of India and how they are also rising up as far as the democracy and democratic values of India are concerned. This is also going to be our fourth segment, in which we will talk about the resurgence of the Kashmiri resistance. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the cross-border terrorism that emanates from the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan to the merged districts. As far as the latest escalation of that violence is concerned, there have been 3 personnel and 2 civilians martyred in these terrorist attacks in the merged districts. Terrorists from intra-Afghan, from inside of Afghanistan have opened fire on a military post in Babar. Troops, of course, responded, but of course there have been casualties. This is not the first time that this has happened in the last few days. What is exactly happening as far as the change in Afghanistan and the trickling of the so-called terrorist effects into Pakistan is concerned? We've been joined by our first guest for this evening, Brigadier retired Babar Farooqi Sahab. He's a senior analyst. Sir, thank you very much to have joined us. Sir, when you see these incidents that happen from across the border in Afghanistan, this is not the first time, but there have been a spate of incidents since the Afghan Taliban, of course, took power in Kabul. How do you see these incidents, and do you feel that this is a trickling of what is happening in Afghanistan, or is there more to it?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm very thankful to you and PTV World for inviting me to talk on this very, very important issue, topic of the day. As regards the situation in Afghanistan is concerned, it's very volatile and it's very known to everybody. Now, these districts, these areas you're talking about, naturally they border Afghanistan. You're right that situation in these areas, especially the merged districts, which used to be FATA some time back, the situation remains very tense. There have been instances of cross-border firing from the, first of all, it used to be from the Afghan forces, at times from the people, those who are linked with various militant groups. There have been casualties. Pakistan has been protesting against these incidents to the Afghan government, and at the international levels also there have been casualties on both sides. Now, as regards these recent incidents of last week and last couple of days are concerned, naturally these have direct linkages with the situation in Afghanistan. The situation in Afghanistan, you know, is very, very uncertain. There are things are not very clear, and by 31st of August, that is tomorrow, once the NATO and American forces are going to complete their pullout from Afghanistan, there are fears that situation may even worsen further. These groups which are operating in Afghanistan, they are not directly in control of the Afghan government, although there have been some nexus in the past also. But presently, while the Taliban's now they have captured almost the entire country, the law and order situation in the country is naturally not very ideal. The central control is not there. So these incidents, with the passage of time, there are chances that they may increase. And
All
the
right, so when
situation.
you talk of the increase in such incidents, let me recall you of a statement that the spokesperson of the Afghan Taliban said when they took over Kabul. They said that the Afghan soil will not be used against any neighboring country. And of course, they were specifying all these splinter groups, for example, TTP or the ISISK or the other groups that are trying to create or have been trying to create havoc across the border into Pakistan as well. Do you feel it will take some time for the so-called powers in Afghanistan, that is that of Afghan Taliban, to take hold of such elements so that they do not create havoc into neighboring countries such as Pakistan? Or do you feel that this is something that is going to continue for some time?
You're right. Although Afghan, the correspondent or the spokesman of Afghan Taliban, he has repeatedly said that Afghan soil would not be allowed to be used against the neighboring countries, which, as a matter of fact, is a very welcome policy statement. But the fact of the matter is that these groups, you are right, till the time there is no central control, the situation does not get very clear, and the government in Kabul is not finally installed, whatever the shape of the government is going to be. These groups naturally are not in control of anybody for the time being. I
All right,
only
sir.
hope.
Also, there's another aspect to it all. Pakistan has always been advising, whether it be the United States or the other NATO forces that were present in Afghanistan, even before they evacuated or started evacuating from our neighboring country, that there needs to be some kind of a logical solution to this. And our Minister for Information, Fawad Chaudhry Saab, while being interviewed by TRT, Turkish channel, said very recently that in the recent past, Pakistan's advice has not been paid heed to, and if Pakistan and the Prime Minister's advice was listened to, the situation would have been different. Do you feel that the US or the NATO allies do not trust Pakistan or have not been trusting Pakistan as far as the Afghan situation is concerned?
There is no denying the fact that Pakistan has sacrificed the most due to the Afghan crisis in the last 4 decades. And this is also a fact that Pakistan has always pledged to the international community that Pakistan will do whatever possible to bring a lasting peace in Afghanistan, because lasting peace in Afghanistan is very vital for Pakistan. In recent past, you're right, Pakistan's government has been repeatedly reminding it to the world community, may it be NATO, the United States, even at the UN level, that after the US withdrawal, after the NATO's withdrawal, things are going to worsen if certain measures are not taken in time. Because if you remember, once the Soviet withdrew from Afghanistan in late 80s, even at that time, Pakistan just reminded to the world, and our advice, our suggestions at that time even were not given that much importance, and later on the entire world suffered. Even now, Pakistan has been all out asking the world, suggesting it to the world that they need to sit together and just see how the government is going to be formed in Afghanistan after the US pullout. And there's another point which you are referring. These groups like ISIS, Khorasan, or TTP, or other militant groups which are operating in Afghanistan, now for some time, till the time the government is not installed, proper control is not there from the central government, they'll be having a leverage to maybe operate more easily, and the neighboring countries are going to maybe threaten due to that. Notwithstanding the fact that Pakistan is very well prepared, our armed forces are very well prepared for any venture if these groups they intend to undertake. But that is not the that is not the question. That is not the actual solution.
True.
Solution can only be found if these groups are controlled from the central government. Earlier, the peace is restored in Afghanistan. The situation gets cleared. better it is for the region, for the neighboring country, and Pakistan naturally will be very, very happy if these things are settled and controlled.
All right, sir, I'd also like to add another quote by Fawad Chaudhry Saab when he was being interviewed by TRT. Well, and he said, the way Afghanistan has been abandoned, and I quote unquote, abandoned in the past, and if the world repeats the same mistake, we will have a hub of extremist organizations right at the border of Pakistan, which will obviously be hugely worrying for us. Is history repeating itself, sir?
Whatever Pakistan has been saying, or our government spokesman has been saying, is correct if we see the historical perspective. It has happened in the past also. As I've earlier said, it happened in late 80s, once the Soviets withdrew. It happened later on also. It is going to happen even this time. So it's better, it's high time for the world community and for those powers who matter and those who have been directly involved in one way or the other in the Afghan crisis, Afghan dispute, to take cognizance out of this fact, because if you abandon Afghanistan, and they are literally abandoning Afghanistan, because it's not that that you get out of Afghanistan and take your forces out and leave Afghanistan to the mercy of these militant groups, because leaving them at the mercy of these militant groups means what? Means very unstable region, unstable Afghanistan, which will have very, very serious consequences, not only for the region.
But sir, when you talk of, spoilers, isn't our other neighboring country, that is India, extremely adamant that it continues to play its role of a spoiler inside of the region, and of course specifically with reference to Pakistan, and it would be in its favor that Afghanistan remains in the state that it is in?
Exactly. There's been a lot of hue and cry in India since Taliban have taken over, because one thing is going to be very, very clear, and it's very clear that from now onwards, if the situation gets stabilized and Taliban are able to form a stable government, taking all the Afghan factions into confidence, then Indians are going to be out of Afghanistan. They have invested heavily, and their investment has been against Pakistan. The terrorist incidents in Pakistan, the so many of incidents of terrorism inside our country, along the Afghan border.
Balochistan, in Lahore, in so many other places where we found solid proof, tangible proof of Indian involvement.
There are so many proofs, and it's known to everybody. It's not a secret now. Indian agencies, Indian hostile intelligence agencies has been using the Afghan soil for infiltrating their terrorists into Pakistan, especially in Balochistan and along Pak-Afghan border in the districts which you're talking about. Now, Indians are going to be a major loser if Afghanistan gets stabilized. No matter the rest of the world is going to be a beneficiary, but India has always tried to do whatever possible to harm Pakistan, to resort to these type of activities against Pakistan, and that is why India would never want a peaceful Afghanistan, because a peaceful Afghanistan means Indians will not be able to do what they've been trying to do in the last more than 2 decades.
Final question, sir. I'll again refer to another quote which Fawad Chaudhry Saab said while being interviewed. He said that Pakistan has been trying its best to stabilize the region, and we are working with regional and international powers for an inclusive government in Afghanistan. Inclusive government is something that many other ministers have also talked about, the inclusive government, including different factors in Afghanistan, whether it be with the help of the Troika Plus, whether it be with the other group that consists of Turkey, Pakistan, Iran, and other Central Asian states as well. Do you feel that Pakistan's role in the coming months, despite these terrorist incidents that have been happening, trickling from Afghanistan, will be pertinent for Afghanistan to become a stable and peaceful country?
Not only pertinent, I would say it's very, very important. Pakistan's role in times to come, if we want to see a peaceful Afghanistan, a stable Afghanistan, a peaceful region, is going to be of vital importance, because no country other than Pakistan has suffered, no country other than Pakistan has played more important role. So it's very, very important for the world, as a matter of fact, to get Pakistan on board and get benefited from whatever we've been suggesting them, telling them, advising them. And in future, in next couple of months, Pakistan's efforts are going to yield result, provided our advices are taken seriously. Inclusive government in Afghanistan is the only answer, because Afghan society, Afghan as a country, there are various groups, various ethnic groups. Unless we have an inclusive government taking all these groups, ethnic groups, all these linguistic groups, religious groups into confidence and making them part of the government, uh, that is the only solution. And this is what we have been suggesting, this is what we have been advocating, and this is not only in our interest, this is going to be in the interest of the entire world, because in the
Exactly.
last 2 decades, all efforts other than these have failed in Afghanistan. They're not going to succeed in future also. Only solution is inclusive government, take interest in Afghanistan, in building a peaceful Afghanistan, and remain very, very careful against nefarious designs of countries like India, uh, which can go any way at a very heavy cost. Um,
Exactly. Thank you
they're
very much, sir,
creating
to have joined us, to have talked to us about, of course, this very pertinent situation as far as our neighboring country, Afghanistan, is concerned, and the trickling effect that we are seeing and we are observing, as also has been warned by our correspondents, our ministers in the past as well. It is pertinent at this moment that not only the world bodies that are important for the future of Afghanistan sit together and carve out and chalk out a policy that gives rise to an inclusive government in Afghanistan, but also pressurize all the powers that be inside of Afghanistan to move for a peaceful country that does not cause harm to its neighboring countries, especially Pakistan. We have suffered enough due to two important wars against terrorism in the past, and it is high time that our neighboring countries also understand the sacrifices that Pakistan has made in order to cleanse its country of these terrorist elements. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, of the day is about the latest situation as far as Afghanistan is concerned, the threat that is emanating from the ISISK, as has been seen at the Kabul airport recently, and the need of collective efforts to curtail the spread of such elements and such incidents. More in the following report.
Terrorism is purportedly rearing its ugly head again as new terror threats emanating from Afghanistan pose a formidable challenge to regional security calculus. Ostensibly taking advantage of uncertainty in Afghanistan, myriad desperate proxies are looking to exploit the situation in order to sabotage a political settlement in Kabul. Denoting the dangerous dynamics, rockets struck on Monday morning in Kabul's Salim Karwan neighborhood, followed by gunfire near Kabul airport. Moreover, the volatile security of Afghanistan is casting bleak shadow on strategic ambience of Pakistan owing to escalating incidents of attacks from Afghanistan upon security forces of Pakistan. 3 security personnel and 2 civilians were martyred in firing from the Afghan side of the border in IED attacks in different areas of the merged districts on Sunday. The statement issued by the ISPR not only condemned the attacks but also categorically emphasized the use of Afghan soil by terrorists for activities against Pakistan is hazardous, and Islamabad expects that existing and future setup in Afghanistan will not allow such activities. According to American military official statement, a US drone strike preemptively blew up a vehicle carrying multiple suicide bombers from Afghanistan's Islamic State affiliate on Sunday before they could attack the ongoing military evacuation at Kabul's international airport. Earlier this week, an IS suicide attack outside the airport killed at least 169 Afghans and 13 US service members. The US carried out a drone strike elsewhere in the country on Saturday that it said killed 2 members of IS's local affiliate in Afghanistan. It's pertinent to mention here that US is to complete hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan by Tuesday. By adhering to evacuation deadline, the US is set to conclude a frenzied 2-week-long airlift of more than 114,000 Afghans and foreigners and withdraw the last of its troops, ending America's longest war in Afghanistan.
Now, to talk more about this, of course, latest developments and all that is happening inside of Afghanistan, because the deadline is that of 31st of August for the US troops to completely evacuate from Afghanistan, and that is tomorrow. We've been joined by Dr. Farah. She's a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Saiba, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saiba, every day we hear of new developments that occur in our neighboring country. And a lot of those developments are not very healthy, especially with regards to the ISIS Khorasan. What has given rise to this giving strength of the splinter groups such as the ISISK and also the TTP in Afghanistan?
All right, thank you, Umar. Umar, I think we need to understand that from where this group, Islamic State, emerged in Afghanistan, they were never a part of Afghanistan before, right? So, of course, what to my little knowledge, whatever I know is they have been brought from Iraq and Syria, Syria and Libya, and they have been placed there in Afghanistan. So to me, initially, it looks like that the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, they were the enemy. So the mission was to eliminate them of Afghanistan. And suddenly now the the Khorasan chapter is becoming an alien there. So who is getting benefited out of this entire game? Is it America, or is it the Taliban, or is it the Islamic State? Who is reaping the benefits out of it, right? So one needs to think about it, the benefits, who is achieving out of this entire Khorasan chapter, Islamic State chapter.
All right, you know, who stands to benefit in your point of view? Because the US are evacuating. India has also evacuated a large number of its personnel. I don't know how many still stay there. Who stands to gain from this rise of violence in Afghanistan? Because this is not what the Afghan Taliban want. As far as I recall, they are going forward with a non-violent scheme of things in order to form a future government in our neighboring country.
Exactly, exactly. So I think some of my writings are clearly stating that there are three spoilers in the region. One is the United States, unfortunately, India, and then the Afghan government, who has already fled. So who will be benefited out of these strikes, these attacks that are taking place recently, and maybe many more will come up as well. So to me, it's the West. To me, it's America, who can sell their own agenda that there is instability in Afghanistan, where the Taliban, they are focusing more on that. They want to bring peace and stability in the region, and they don't want to have violence. They don't want to use their soil by anyone against any sort of spreading violence there. So I don't think so Taliban are getting any benefits out of it. It's the West, it's the America, it's the spoilers in the region who can achieve larger benefits out of it. And they want to bring people, from people I mean states within the region like Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other states to their terms.
All right. Now, Dr. Saiba, also, this latest spate of attacks from the ISIS Khorasan at the Kabul airport, do you feel this will give rise to some kind of a collaboration or a partnership between the Afghan Taliban and the US government or the US intelligence in the future?
Well, what sort of cooperation where the America has already decided to withdraw its forces by 31st of August, that is tomorrow, right? So what they want to have here, where America, I think, to my little knowledge, America wants to have a reason to stay behind for certain reasons. And since like Taliban are no more threat to them as they're in power, so they are raising and creating this Islamic State Khorasan chapter as a potential enemy whom they have to target. And I think 3 days back on the 27th of August, when President Joe Biden gave his address, and he said that we will hunt you down, right? So if they have to hunt down Islamic State now, this means their narrative has changed. Like initially in the past, they were trying to hunt down Al-Qaeda in the Taliban, and now they are going to hunt down Islamic State in the Khorasan chapter people. So the mission remains the same. They still are struggling with what sort of strategy they should come up with to stay in Afghanistan. So this time, I think this strategy will not sell out. Nobody's going to buy it. Nobody's going to believe in it, that they are really here, or they are attacking, or having some missiles attacks on the people to target the Islamic State suicide bombers as they did yesterday, right? So the story is quite vague. It is not something that can be easily sold out in the market.
All right, Dr. Saiba, we've seen the unmanned strike that happened very recently as a retaliation of what happened at Kabul, and the US claims that they have shot down one of the perpetrators behind the attack in Kabul. Do you feel such attacks are going to, or such retaliations are going to continue if the situation becomes or continues to stay unstable in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I think so many such incidents is going to happen further, not only in Afghanistan, but to pressurize Pakistan as well, right? So we may see such kind of things happening here. And that will not be only coming from the American support, but the spoiler in the region, that is India. We have a history of that, and probably we are witnessing even terrorist attacks here in Balochistan region as well. We probably will be coming across several other insecurity issues based on the ground that they want to put pressure, so their presence in the region could be more obvious, right? So they want to,
All
if
right.
somebody wants to be somewhere, they want to showcase for what reason.
All right. Dr. Saiba, also envoys of 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council are holding an emergency meeting today to discuss this rapidly evolving situation as far as Afghanistan is concerned, and of course the Taliban
Yeah,
takeover of Afghanistan. Also,
yeah.
France and Britain are expected to submit a resolution in the meeting that will propose the establishment of a safe zone in Kabul for the protection of those who are trying to leave Afghanistan. At the same time, the United States is also going to hold a virtual meeting of the foreign ministers of several countries to discuss the future strategy in Afghanistan. Keeping these two things in mind, do you feel that the United Nations or the G7 countries or the G5 countries are going to play some kind of a role in the future of Afghanistan, or do you feel it's going to be something that they're going to just observe from a distance and put all the pressure on countries such as Pakistan?
Yeah, I think it's this old tactic of looking and observing the entire situation from a distance, right? They need to be here. When America is leaving, still they are not realizing the factual things here on the ground. So they need to understand the ground reality. So far, if whatever I know is that America, UK, and France, they are working together to plan for the safe, what is called safe evacuation of the people who wants to flee from Afghanistan. But at the same time, they are leaving behind question marks that the Islamic State Khorasan chapter is very active there and potentially is going to be a threat for the people who don't want to be there, right? Where the Taliban are urging their people that if you want to stay here, it's your country. You have to make it as your own and have and own it as your country, because we are fighting for your liberty. We are fighting for you, right? And they have achieved whatever they wanted with after a long struggle. So in this situation, all states who are trying to work together to come to a consensus, I don't think so. It's going to be that easier unless they involve regional actors like Pakistan, who is already involved in the evacuation plan, who is already, I think I was going through the numbers so far until 26th of August. I think more than 7,000 people have been evacuated with the help of Pakistan, right? So they need to acknowledge the facts. They need to acknowledge the efforts the Pakistani government is putting in towards this entire process of evacuation of the diplomats and the Afghan people, right?
All
Unless
right,
and
Dr.
until they don't
Farahnas, also you
recognize.
were talking of regional players. Let's talk of
Yeah.
the addition of one more regional player that the US is kind of backing, and that is Qatar. We know that in Doha there have been the talks between the Afghan government and the Afghan Taliban in the past, when Pakistan pushed both sides to come together to talks. And now the US is kind of pushing for Qatar to continue to remain a regional partner as far as also bringing in the Afghan immigrants from Afghanistan is concerned, and maybe other roles in the future as well. Do you feel that we are going to see an extension as far as global and regional players working for the future of Afghanistan are concerned? We know we have Iran, we know we have Russia, Pakistan, and the Central Asian countries, and Turkey as well, of course, and the United States of America. Do you feel we are going to see an
Yeah.
addition of other regional players that will be playing a part, important or a small part, as far as the future of Afghanistan is concerned?
All right. Yes, Umar. I think back in time, 20 years ago, the players were completely different. Saudi Arabia had a very key role to play in terms of the entire Soviet-Afghan war, right? So, but this time, the player is going to change. Some players got very muted, and others going to be activated. So, Qatar probably they will have a very significant role to play here, because we can see a large number of evacuated Afghanis, they are already stationed there. And even the troops who are being taken, they are already stationed there. So probably other actors will be popping up, since it's all about the game of trust, whom they are trusting and whom they're not trusting, right? So since we can say that the trust of the West is very slim towards Pakistan, so they want to engage other actors, like to kind of bring Pakistan to terms through other means. So it could be Turkey, it could be Doha, it could be other actors, the UAE and all. But yes, a change and a shift from the actors involved 20 years ago and now in 2021 is going to be a different game.
But where will that leave Pakistan, that has been playing a very important role as far as stability in Afghanistan is concerned, that has pushed both sides to come together? Had it not been for Pakistan, the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government would never have gone forward for talks in Doha. Do you feel Pakistan will, in your point of view, I've also asked this to my previous guests, continue to play an important role as far as peace in Afghanistan is concerned?
Pakistan has a very significant role when it comes to bringing peace and stability in Afghanistan, because it's not really about that we care about our neighbor too much. Yes, we do. It's not about it that we don't. We do. Because if you have a peaceful neighborhood, you can achieve your goals in a very less and fruitful manner, right? So in that way, Pakistan's role can never be denied, but the West is deliberately denying the role based on Pakistan-China relationship, right? So Pakistan can potentially play a very good role if the US leave behind its grudges with China and move on and try to
And of
solve
course,
the
China is also
issue
a very
of,
important player as far as Afghanistan is concerned.
yeah. Yeah, we cannot deny all these actors because they have their stakes involved, they have their roles involved. The peace and security of Afghanistan matters a lot. But now, Umar, if I ask you this thing, that if there is peace and stability in Afghanistan, who is going to be benefited out of that? Of course, the neighborhood, right?
Of course.
So why would America want to have and leave behind a peaceful Afghanistan? They want to leave Afghanistan, mark my words, they want to leave Afghanistan in a turmoil for decades to come. So the other regional actors remain engaged in the same chaos, confusion, instability, war-torn situation for the rest of their time. And that will bring benefits for the Western countries. But I think we need to be very peaceful in terms of understanding the situation, in terms of trying to sort it out through peaceful means, as we are claiming. Our Prime Minister is claiming, our government is claiming.
All
so
right.
we need
Dr.
a peaceful
Farah, also
Afghanistan.
let's talk about Afghanistan. Let's go inside of Afghanistan and the different negotiations or the talks process that are going on, whether it be within the Afghan Taliban or the Afghan Taliban with other powers that be. Now, a band of veteran Afghan leaders that include two regional strongmen are going forward for talks with the Afghan Taliban as far as forming a government is concerned in our neighboring country, which includes, of course, Khalid Noor, who's the son of Ata Muhammad Noor, the former governor of northern Afghanistan's Balkh province, and Uzbek leader Abdul Rashid Dostum, and others that will be talking to the Afghan Taliban. Do you feel that these different factions, of course, that have not been on the same page as far as their political front is concerned, will finally sit together and understand the complexities and the regional and global complexities of what is Afghanistan, and also, as you pointed out, countries, role of countries that do not want stability in Afghanistan? Don't these powers that be, that are the different factions in Afghanistan, understand the current dynamics and want to work for a future that is stable in their country?
I think where this is high time for all the states who are involved in this entire situation to understand it. If yet they haven't got their message, I think they are really losers in that way. Sorry, but they are losers to me. So I think in international relations, we call it a game of interest. So if it is in my, like, as I said, I need a peaceful neighborhood because that's good for my benefit, for my economic prosperity, for my development, right? I mean the state of Pakistan. So it is in the best interest of all actors involved, like whatever the diplomatic terms are developing there in Afghanistan, within there, it is for their benefit to come to terms with one another. Without that, it's impossible. But another thing I think we are missing out is the funding thing that is frozen by the Americans who left behind. So they need to release it. The Taliban need to run their government machinery. They need to provide salaries to its people, and they need to have diplomatic terms with one another. They need to open up trade. They need to run the mechanism. For that, smooth functioning of the entire group of people or group of states who are involved here is required. So they need to work together. Without working together, without teaming up, I think they cannot achieve whatever they are aiming for to achieve in Afghanistan and within the region particularly.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Farah, to have joined us, foreign affairs expert, talking to us about the latest developments in Afghanistan and the repercussions on the region, and of course the different world powers that be that are gathering together in order to carve out some kind of a strategy as far as the future of Afghanistan is concerned. Also within Afghanistan, the different parties that are getting together to go for talks with the Afghan Taliban in order to form a future government in the country. We hope, we pray for an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process, and a country that is not only inclusive, a government that is not only inclusive, but a government that paves the way for stability and peace in Afghanistan. Our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns India. Now, we've been talking about India in the past as well, and the different human rights reports that have come forward that talk about how India is derailing as a democracy. Now, in the latest report that has come out from the Foreign Affairs magazine, it talks about how democratic has India continued to be or currently remains. In March, Freedom House downgraded India from free to partly free. This is a status it shares with countries such as Ecuador, Mozambique and Serbia. The same month, Sweden's V-Dem, Varieties of Democracy, went further that it announced that India had ceased to be an electoral democracy altogether, and now it classifies India as an electoral autocracy, a notch above closed autocracies. Also, India is ranked 7th on a V-Dem list of 10 countries that have lost the most democratic ground over the past decade. This is just the tip of the iceberg, let's put it that way. There have been so many other reports that have come up. And India's ethnic democracy is at stake. This is what a lot of people have been talking about, whether it be at the federal level, whether it be the bastions of leftists that have been assaulted by the BJP government, whether it be the Babar mosque incident, all the other incidents as far as vandalization of mosques are concerned, the way the minorities are treated, not only in different areas of our neighboring country, but also within Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, where the Muslims are in a majority. And since not now, but since many years, this is what is happening as far as India is concerned. And this latest report is not just the first one, and it will not be the last one that will talk about the different ranks as far as India is concerned, as far as how India is going down all of these ranks as far as democratic values are concerned. Let's see where India goes as far as the next couple of months is concerned. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, Kashmiri resistance is resurging. It has been coming up, but of course there has been a very important role as far as the Kashmiri youth are concerned. The Kashmiri artists are bringing global spotlight on Kashmir despite living in a state under decades of revolt. More in the following report.
The imperial impostor, India's only Muslim-majority state, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, is embroiled in protracted state-sponsored terrorism since decades. New Delhi established itself as regional pariah by unilaterally revoking Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir state autonomy on the 5th of August 2019 draconian measures. The revocation of Article 370 and consequent massive public resentment turned the valley into 21st century concentration camp as Indian military unabashedly perpetrates outrageous crimes against humanity in besieged Muslim-majority land. The saffron terrorist Indian regime has left no stone unturned to atrociously crush the popular resistance movement of indigenous Kashmiris and thus imposed appalling clampdown on communications and mobility of Kashmiris. Amid iron-fist curtailment of freedom of speech, the native artist fraternity is voicing its resentment against Indian regime through symphony of music. Young Kashmiri artists have taken the mantle of highlighting plight of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir by bequeathing the world with new revolutionary vocabulary wrapped in artistic masterpieces. Ahmed Javed, the hip-hop Kashmiri rapper, has earned global acclaim by producing heart-touching songs about living in a state under decades of revolt. The 24-year-old rapper's home, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, had been under a security clampdown, with the Indian government deploying an additional 35,000 paramilitary troops to what was already one of the most militarized zones in the world. In between songs, the mushrooming Kashmiri artists open up to their audiences about their fears, ordeals and anxieties, urging them to pay attention to what was going on in Kashmir. The post-apocalyptic Kashmir comes as a rude awakening to many young Kashmiris, whereby Indian oppression is whipping up their artistic fervor to awake the indifferent international community.
Let's hope that the world understands the plight of our Kashmiri brethren that are undergoing these atrocities and human rights abuses in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Economic interests aside, let's hope that these world powers also pressurize India to go and to give these people their right to self-determination, their right to decide what they want to do with their lives. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments. Stay tuned. Allah Hafiz and get yourselves vaccinated.